we move to the quarterback hate list, which is kicked off by CJ Stroud. Still QB7 for you, Matthew, but right now he's being taken as a top 5 quarterback on Yahoo.
Look, this is the problem with the hate list. Like, if I thought about it in 1999 when I came up with the name, I probably would have chosen something a little bit less antagonistic.
I don't know if the lukewarm list
so
fits on
yeah, exactly. But right,
same.
it's when somebody's on the hate list, it doesn't mean I hate the player. It means I hate their ADP. And my concern with CJ Stroud, as good as he is, and I think he's phenomenal. I think he's a baller, and I think he's going to have a monster year. My issue is where he's being drafted. Right, he's being drafted as a top 5 fantasy quarterback, and he doesn't run. He doesn't run at all. Right. So in essence, basically, over the last 2 seasons, every quarterback that finished top 5 in points per game had at least 240 rushing yards. Last year, CJ Stroud had like 167. In fact, since 2020, there are only 2 quarterbacks in the entire NFL since 2020 who have finished top 5 in fantasy points per game with fewer than 240 rushing yards. Brady in 2021, he had over 5,300 passing yards and 43 touchdowns. Aaron Rodgers in 2020, 4,300 passing yards, 48 touchdowns. So my question is, it's like, if you think CJ Stroud can get to 45 touchdowns and 4,500 passing yards, then you should draft him as QB5. But just, I think those are really lofty numbers for a team that's more balanced on offense than you think, that has a good defense, they're not going to be in shootouts, and as great as CJ Stroud is, and yes, they added Stephon Diggs, the fact is that every defensive coordinator that faces the Texans this year has spent all offseason studying tape on CJ Stroud. Last year, he came out of nowhere. So, do I think he finishes as the top 10 fantasy quarterback? Of course I do. But just going to the top 5, ahead of guys like Richardson, ahead of guys like Kyler Murray, it's just like guys that can get you dual threat points, it's surprising to me.
Our next one, Tua Tagovailoa. Jay, this story with Tua, right? Being drafted as a top 12 quarterback. He's QB 17 for Matthew. The last 2 years, September through November, totally capable of starting quarterback in fantasy. After that, when you get to crunch time and then the playoffs, kind of falls off a cliff for you in fantasy.
Brutal ending stretch of the season as well for the Dolphins this year. They end the season having to play road games at the Jets and at Cleveland, which is rough. I think with Tua as well, so much of his production is tied to Tyreek Hill's production, and Tyreek Hill has been the best wide receiver in football across the past 2 years, averaging 1,750 yards a season. It's just unlikely that a guy who's 30 years old is going to do that again. So I think that with Tyreek falling off a little bit, with the fact that Tua falls off every year when it gets colder, just some uncertainty, and also the fact that he just doesn't run. You want that upside.
Also on the hate list here, Matthew, Justin Herbert.
We talked about Tua yesterday.
Yeah.
He comes in as QB 19 for you. He's being drafted right around there, but there's some injury questions here and also just some overall pass game questions as a whole.
If you're drafting Justin Herbert, you're literally banking on the fact, well, he's Justin Herbert.
Yes.
Right? Because there's nothing else to justify it. We know it's going to be a run-heavy offense,
Greg
right?
Roman.
It's Greg Roman. It's Jim Harbaugh. They have run, and they've run significantly throughout their years as play callers and head coaches in the NFL. Okay? Then you're like, okay, well, if he's going to – so he's not – is he going to run? Well, he's dealing with his plantar fasciitis. And while Justin Herbert is mobile, he's mobile in the Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence way. He's not Josh Allen. He's not Jalen Hurts. He's not Lamar Jackson. Right, but given the plantar fasciitis, you figured they're probably not going to run him as much, right? This is somebody who got really banged up last year, and then you think about obviously Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Gerald Everett, Austin Eckler moving on. So much of their production last year, 66% of their receptions, over 63% of the receiving yards, no longer on the team. Josh Palmer's the only guy there that has any kind of connection with Herbert. It's just run heavy offense. It's just. He's a big name, but I think he'll have small fantasy production this year relative to other players.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.